Welcome back to another episode of Transformation Talks. I'm your host, Sam Forget, and today we'll be joined by Emily Moss, who is a nutritionist and weight loss coach who helps women over 40 lose weight in a way that actually fits real life. Emily has personally lost over 30 pounds after the age of 50 and has kept it off for more than 12 years, and now teaches women how to understand their nutrition, stop starting over, and make choices they can stick with. Emily, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. I think a wonderful place for us to start would be with your backstory, your own weight loss journey, and then a little bit about how you've been able to maintain it for 12 years it's been. Because obviously,
Yeah.
a lot of people have had at least temporary success with weight loss over years, if not decades, but it's the maintenance part that tends to be the missing piece for most people. So yeah, let's start there with
Yeah. Yeah,
your
agreed.
initial journey.
So, like most every woman, I've done all the things, right? In the 80s, all the things that were, low fat, all the Snackwell cookies, all the that sort of thing. And then in the 90s with the low carb Atkins and the Weight Watchers and all the things, the Jenny Craig frozen meals, all of that. And so I was pretty normal as far as a woman that dieted, never completely happy with her body. Not that I was ever really that much overweight, you know, 30, 40 pounds is a lot. I mean, like I'm 5'4", so I mean, it was a lot for me, but it was one of those things that I would lose, 10 or 15 pounds, which was, in my mind, good enough. And so that good enough kind of was the momentum that I needed to feel better in my clothes and that kind of thing. And it was just a cycle, it was, I'd keep it off for, I don't know, maybe a month, maybe 6 weeks if there was an event, a wedding or vacation or something like that. And then I just went back to my old habits, just the normal things that we do. We don't pay attention to what we're eating out a lot. Things like that. And I was a, I'll say I was a runner. I was a runner in the aspect of I did a bunch of 5Ks. I've done, a handful of half marathons, and I liked it from the standpoint of there was community and I enjoyed being around people. But I was always frustrated with my weight. Like it was never coming off, even with, running and that kind of thing. And so right around my 50th birthday, it really was like that light bulb of you've been doing this for so long. What is it going to take to actually keep it off for good? And so I really had to sort of look at the patterns and behaviors of my life and who I was around in certain situations, and if I was going to continue to surround myself with certain people and places and events, what changes would I have to make in a realistic way, right? Because I'm not going to say no to everything. Um, and so that was sort of like the starting point. And so it took me I mean, in my mind, everything is longer than you think it's going to be, right?
Of course.
Um, it took me for 30 pounds, it took me over 9 months to lose it. I wasn't in a hurry and I kept reminding myself that, listen, you've done this thing a jillion times and it's never really worked long term. So what if we just take a different approach, take the timeline off, and just maybe tweak a few things here and there. And so that kind of started the process. Um, and then, here like 9, 10 months later, it was off. And so I think one of the things that really has helped me maintain over the years is so many times the goal was the number, right? Like whatever that number was that you wanted to weigh, that was the number. And I think in my mind, it was sort of like the finish line, right? Like I've met my goal. And as a runner, like like knowing, okay, I'm going to sign up for this 5K or whatever the thing is, right? So there's the runner who signs up for the 5K, trains for the 5K, crosses the finish line, gets their medal, they're done. Then there's the other runner who is a runner. They sign up for the 5K, they cross the finish line, and they keep running, right? And so that was the shift for me. Like, I didn't want to stop when I crossed the finish line. I wanted to keep going, and to maintain it. And so that's, that has just been a process over the years, coming up with meals that were easy, repeatable, and, how did it fit in my life?
So many takeaways there and so many things that I want to hone in on. And I think within that, a great place for us to start with something that would be actionable for a lot of people is the small adjustments that you made over those, initial 9 to 10 months. Because with a lot of the diets and protocols that you mentioned from the past, many of those tend to be more drastic, sweeping things that are harder to maintain. But during those 9 months, you said, well, it was an adjustment here, an adjustment there. You removed a lot of the pressure on yourself to go fast and drastic. So, what were some of those changes that you made? It's so repeatable meals were up there. Would you say, that's
Yeah,
toward the top?
repeatable meals were up there. And then, like, really looking at food from the lens of, do I actually like it and can I taste it? And so that might seem strange in a sense, but think about this. If you are building your own salad, or you're ordering a salad out, or having a taco for that matter, do you actually taste the cheese on it? Right? Because you've got the salsa on the taco, maybe you've got some avocado on the taco, the lettuce. Like, for me, I really like the cheese became one of these like extras. And so I thought, you know what? If I eliminate the cheese on things that I can't taste it on, there's like 100 calories right there that I don't even miss. And so it's looking for those small things. A lot of times it was handfuls of things. That was the other thing that I would find myself, really having to, like, all right, if I'm going to eat whatever the thing is, it's not going to be out of my hand. I might not weigh and measure it, but it's going to be on a plate. It's not going to be direct from the bag, that sort of thing. So those small little tweaks, but I really think like looking at things that you really aren't going to miss. It took me a long time, and this is going to be something that people are going to be like, no, I could never do that. I didn't think I could either, but I went to black coffee. Like, it took me a while. I was a creamer only for a while, and then I just slowly reduced it down. And again, it was not fast. It was a very gradual thing. Maybe it started off with like 2 tablespoons of creamer, and then I was like, I wonder what like 1.5 would taste like. And so I was like, okay, that's palatable. All right, what does 1 tablespoon taste like? And so then I lived with that for a while. And then I just continued, tweaking it. And again, it's 100 calories here and 100 calories there. And the next thing the desire for those things are just gone.
I think for anybody hearing that who is resistant to pulling back on whatever their coffee concoction is, or maybe something like cheese that they typically get on a lot of meals, I think a really helpful reframe is to just think of this almost as an experiment. Because it sounds
Mhm.
like that's the way you went about it is, all right, let me just try. This isn't a lifelong commitment to never having, creamer in my coffee again. Let me just pull back a little bit, see if I'm satisfied with less. And I find that often the answer to that question is yes. It doesn't really make a huge flavor difference, or you can have a little bit less and still get the flavor fix that you're after. But yeah, just having it in your mind that this is not okay. Starting tomorrow, Emily and Sam said no more creamer in my coffee forever. But it could be going from 175 calories of add-ons down to 75, which that's not nothing. I actually just put out a podcast last week about weight loss for smaller women who might be maintaining around 1,700 calories. And when you're looking at that number, 100 calories, again, that ain't nothing in terms of an adjustment of where you can get calories back to either more easily enter a deficit or maybe reallocate those calories to something more satisfying. So I really like the idea of kind of experimenting. Let me see how I do with a little bit less. And obviously you've stuck with so many of those things.
Well, and like you said, if it's 100 calories, that's 700 for the entire week. That's a lot.
Hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
That's a lot. And so I think that is one of the things too, just to sort of get into the habit of, do I like it? Like asking a lot of personal questions to yourself, because oftentimes if we're making a meal that we're used to making and we're following the recipe, we never question it. We just make the thing, right?
So true.
And if we go out to dinner, it comes how it comes. We don't really question it, you know? And I think even like honing down to certain things that, do you like potatoes over rice or do you like rice over potatoes? One of them you might have a preference for. So make your meals around the potatoes, for example, or make it around the rice, whatever it is. And that way, like, okay, I'm going into this week, I'm going to build meals around things that I actually like. I'm not going to like force myself to eat something just because somebody said it's a healthy thing to eat or you should eat this. What do I like and how does it fit, and align with the goals that I have?
I definitely want to get into this idea of repeatable meals, but one last question on your kind of initial journey that I think will be really valuable for a lot of people. You mentioned also auditing who you were spending time with and how you were typically spending time with these people. And like you also said, it's not like we're going to say live like a hermit, say no to absolutely everybody who wants to drink or eat out. But, tell me a little bit more about that in terms of how you looked at, all right, what's my social life right now and how is that impacting my decisions?
Right. There are, I feel like everybody has like two kind of groups of friends, right? There are those groups of folks that, okay, we're going to go out and pretty much everybody is healthy-ish. They're going to make some choices, whatever. And then you've got another group that, okay, these are like my, party friends that meet for happy hour, where I go to their house and we have a couple of drinks, that sort of thing. And I think knowing who those people are in your life, the importance they play in your life, and it could be very high to very low. And, maybe you see some often, maybe some not as often, but coming up with your own boundary, whatever that looks like for you, it might be that the people that you meet for happy hour, twice a month, maybe that's totally fine. Maybe you can go and, have a drink or two and it doesn't turn into, a bunch of grazing, or you get home and you eat extra things. Maybe it's not anything, or maybe it's something, and I think that's where you sort of evaluate, okay, when I go out for happy hour, what does that look like for me? And I guess the question is, am I willing to change it? If I'm not willing to change it, I need to be okay with that and just accept that my weight loss is going to be slower. Totally fine. What other areas do I need to tweak if I'm not going to really tweak that one?
I think that's another very valuable point. The idea of it's not inherently bad if you are unwilling or resistant to adjusting something, as long as your expectations are in line with your willingness or unwillingness to do certain things. So if you're like, hey, I really don't want to negotiate those few times per month I go out, that's fine. But we also can't deny the impact of whether it's alcohol or extra meals out. Our mutual good friend, PJ Street, who has also been on this podcast before, I just saw him put out a post about how weight loss is exponentially more difficult if you crack double digit meals out or drinks per month. And I know we've both seen that to be true time and time again. Like, is it possible? Sure, if you got really high maintenance calories or you're willing to make a lot of sacrifices elsewhere. But for most people, when those two numbers start to creep up, like you can be mindful and you can be moderate and you can do a lot of things really well. It's like an uphill battle numerically to be in those environments a lot, making certain decisions.
Exactly, exactly. And, if you are a person who eats out multiple times a week, right? Maybe you've got business lunches, 3 or 4 times a week, or maybe you're retired and that's just your life now. You just socialize and eat out. I think one of the biggest takeaways is when you do look at the menu, it falls into one of two categories. It's either a planned meal or a planned indulgence. And there's no in between. It's not I feel like having this. It's either I'm going to eat like I'm going to eat at home or I'm going to have an indulgence. And if it's not a special occasion indulgence, it's just an indulgence. I just want what I want. That I think falls to I call it the pick one: bread basket, dessert, or alcohol. Like pick your thing. You don't need to have all of them. And I think that is I think that's sort of helpful just to sort of think about like when you do go out, look like what is the most boring thing on this menu that would be something similar to what I would eat at home. And then just enjoy that and really change your mindset from I'm going out to eat to I'm spending time with friends, and if the mindset then becomes it's not about the food because this is not a special occasion, it's just either I'm lazy and I don't want to cook and I just want to go out, or I'm meeting some friends just on a Wednesday night just because I want to get together with them, and if those are the cases, fantastic. Just make sure that what you are ordering, not only is it going to align with your goals, but that you're going to feel good after. You're going to feel good the next day, all of that sort of thing.
I love that. Almost refocus on the other things that a meal out can bring to the table, opportunity to connect with other people, to make memories, opportunity to actually feel good afterward. It does not have to be synonymous with feeling bloated and gross and having a hard time sleeping that night. So I think that's great because to me, that makes it feel less like just purely avoidance and restriction based of like I'm just going to try to be good, I'm going to try not to have this thing, and like what are all the things I'm not trying to do rather than what are the things I can focus on more, what can I seek out and enjoy. Okay, I keep starting to touch upon repeatable meals and then distracting myself. But I
Mm.
think that, I mean, if I had to come up with a short list of 3 to 5 things that would radically change somebody's ability to lose weight and then keep it off, I would personally put repeatable meals on that short list. And it seems like from a lot of the things that you post, it's something that you also place a great emphasis on. So can you explain for anybody who's unfamiliar what repeatable meals are, how they can be valuable, how you go about creating your own?
Yeah, fantastic. No, I love repeatable meals, especially the key to a repeatable meal is you have to actually like it. It has to be good. It has to, when you make something and you're excited to have the leftovers the next day, that's what a repeatable meal is. That's all it is, right? There are leftovers that sit in our fridge because they were just so-so. So that's the key. It has to be something that the next day and the next day, you're still going to like it. I could eat tacos 365 days a year. I don't, but I definitely could. Um, I have eaten probably for weekdays, Monday through Friday, for probably 3 years. I've eaten the same thing, which is a Greek yogurt bowl with some protein powder and some berries in it. Um, I like it. I don't get tired of it. It's easy. Sometimes I prep it in advance, sometimes I don't. It really just depends, but I like it. The other key thing about repeatable meals, besides enjoying whatever it is, it has to fit in your calorie budget. There's a lasagna is a fantastic leftover meal. But you know what? That is not going to fit into my calorie budget day after day after day, right? So it's coming up with meals that fit into your calorie budget. And also for me, I'm looking at my protein and I'm looking at my fiber. Those are the three things. The carbs and the fats, in my opinion, they're going to fall where they're going to fall. As long as I'm not exceeding my calorie budget and I'm still hitting my protein and coming pretty close to my fiber, I'm okay with it. So the yogurt bowl, that's something that I, put on repeat. The other thing that I do for breakfast a lot is, I mean, it's easy. There's some, like frozen turkey sausages that I like to have with, I make like this lemon loaf that's, a protein thing. It kind of tastes like the Starbucks lemon loaf kind of thing. So it gives me that bakery thing that, I want, but in a healthy way that, hits the calories that I need and that kind of thing. And then for lunches, I mean, a lot of people get stuck on lunches because they feel like it needs to be something substantial or something unsubstantial, right? Like it has to be like super tiny, or I need to go out and order some like giant salad, something or other. When at the end of the day, it could be something very simple like a lot of times I'll do, maybe some sort of like deli turkey with some crackers and some veggies and, call it a day. Or maybe a sandwich, I mean, there's a lot of high fiber breads out there. A lot of people avoid breads because they feel like they're not going to help their weight loss. But if you can get good at reading labels and seeing, some of the fiber qualities that are in some of the breads nowadays, there's no reason to shy away from that kind of thing. And then a lot of times, dinners can be repeats for lunch, depending on what the dinner is, that kind of thing. So yeah, I love a repeatable meal. Um, I think a lot of times some resistance can come up because oh, isn't that boring? I need some variety. Don't you get sick of that? That kind of thing. And I would say yes and yes and yes, right? Like, yes, it gets boring. Yes, I would like some variety. And I think the answer to that really is making sure that you don't plan too far out. Because I think a lot of times people will think, oh, I'm going to meal prep on Sunday and I'm going to put all these meals together and that's going to take me to Friday. In my experience, personally and with my clients, you're good till about Wednesday. By about Wednesday, you're pretty much tired of all those things that you've had Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And Thursday is sort of like, let's either regroup with another grocery run and kind of start all over for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, right? Or maybe Thursday. Maybe that's the lazy day and you don't feel like cooking and you're going to go and get some Chipotle or some meal that you can create that's going to fall in line with your goals. And then Friday, Saturday, you sort of work that out. But I think that is one of the biggest things. It's like if you are tired of it, you're not going to stick with it and don't prep too far in advance.
That is such a great tip because I find that so many people hear this advice, they have great intentions, and they almost come out of the gate too hot with, okay, here are the 4 meals I'm going to eat from now till eternity. And I'm going to, on Sunday night, map these out in my Fitness Pal or Chronometer, every single thing until Friday. And I find that most people fizzle out within 2 to 3 weeks at best if they try something like that. So I like the mix of, okay, you have almost this small weekly menu of things that you can rotate between that check the box of, it helps you hit your targets. You like it, an important component, makes you feel good, but also the opportunity to maybe swap. Well, this is my go to breakfast typically, but I also like this. Let me rotate that in and giving yourself a little bit of freedom to do that. So it's like a nice mix of the two of I have this menu that I pull from, but I'm not necessarily going to decide 15 to 21 meals in advance and commit to that. Because I also think that's where, people feel like they're in shackles decision making wise. And then they're like, okay, I overcommitted to all these meals and now I just want to break out of it compared to that midweek checkpoint that you talked about, which I think is a great system for people where let me just map out at least loosely the next few days. And then I get to whether it's Wednesday or Thursday night, that's my midweek checkpoint of do I just want to run it back with the same meals I already had? I'm fine with that this week. But maybe next week it's, I'm going to swap, say in my case, chicken as my base. I have a ton of bowls, like Chipotle style stuff. I eat an enormous amount of those. But maybe I've had chicken for 3 weeks straight. I'm like, let me switch to, a leaner beef for the second half of this week. So foundation, the same. The meal is still repeatable. I'm just making small adjustments to have like a little bit of the novelty factor.
Yeah. And I think also variety can come from the condiments, right? All
Sure.
the sauces and all of that. And again, it goes back to reading labels and making sure that where the calories are coming from and that kind of thing. Oftentimes that's really all you need, just to like doctor something up just a smidge.
That's so true. Emily, can you speak to the importance of not deviating from this too much on the weekends? Which I know it's not the first time people have heard that, but I still think that most people underestimate the impact of Friday night to Sunday night's decision making when they've been good for Monday to Friday, and then every week, nets it at maintenance. So, can you speak to the weekends a little bit
For
and the
sure.
importance? Yeah,
For sure. So most people, let's just a common thing is a Friday night pizza, right? Like a Friday night pizza, and maybe you're with your family, you're going to have pizza and a glass of wine. Maybe that's your Friday night. Okay, fine. If that's what you want to do, if that is a family kind of thing we do, let's say, could you still go or order in the pizza instead of having, four slices, let's say, could you have two slices with a salad and still your glass of wine? Again, like you talked about in the very beginning, just experiment. Like you don't have to do this every single Friday night. I'm only having two pieces, but just see, like, am I still full with two pieces or a piece and a half and a salad with my glass of wine, let's say. Okay, and then we're into Saturday. Okay, Saturday. Are we home all day? Do we have errands to run? If we have errands to run, are we going to swing through a drive-through to like pick up some food? And then also, are we going out Saturday night? Like those are two things, right, that can happen. So again, I go back to, okay, what's your repeatable breakfast? What can you just like lock and load first thing? Eat the breakfast. Then decide, okay, I know we're going out to dinner Saturday night. I also know we have errands to run. So, and my kid, let's say you've got kids that are in the car and they're running around. My kid is going to want to go through Chick-fil-A or something because we're going to be out. And that's really not going to work for me if I want to continue this momentum of weight loss, right? And so that's just deciding, okay, I'm going to throw in some convenience things. And while my kid or whoever is having the Chick-fil-A, or if I don't get home in time, I've got a protein bar in the car. I've got an apple with me. I've got a shake, maybe, just some convenience things that are high protein hit and a reasonable calorie hit, and then you can be done, right? Easy as that. And then you've got your Saturday night out for dinner. Again, if it's just the norm, if you always are going out on a Saturday night, if that's normal for you, then you got to pull back to the pick one if you want to keep the weight off. You cannot have the appetizer, the entree, the bread basket, a couple of drinks, and a few bites of your friend's dessert and think that Monday morning your scale is going to be down. Like that is unrealistic, and that is where the frustration is coming from because I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing until Friday night pizza, and then it just escalates. And then Sunday comes, and so you know what? I haven't done much on Sunday, so maybe the thinking there is I'm not going to eat much. I'm just going to skip breakfast, just have some coffee. I'm hungry around 11:30 or 12, so maybe I'll have this, like there's one slice of pizza left from Friday in the fridge. So I'm just going to have that. It's small, let's say. And then Sunday night comes and the mindset then is, well, I'm going to eat dinner because I've barely had anything today, right? And so that's where that loop happens of why am I so frustrated on Monday when really I barely ate anything Sunday. Monday, all I did was go out to eat, but I had all the things. And so I think, and you've shared this before, that the one meal out with all those add-ons, I mean, for a woman who is trying to quote unquote be good, I mean, it's upward of 1,000 to 1,200 calories for one meal. And for most women, that is like 80% of their budget. Yeah.
which,
So,
which, go ahead.
yeah.
Sorry.
No. I was just going to say, so if you want to continue the momentum that you're having, the weekend has to look at least 75 to 80% like the rest of your week. You know, um, what if the Friday night pizza was just that, and you decided, I'm not drinking tonight. I'm going to reserve my drinking for only at restaurants, right? I'm not going to have the wine at the house with the pizza like I normally do. Okay, so you've probably cut another, I don't know, 400 calories out by not having it with your pizza Friday night. And then you're out on Saturday. Okay, I'm having the wine. Maybe I'm having two glasses, but I'm not going to have the bread from the bread basket. I'm not going to have the dessert. And my entree is really going to be some sort of lean protein. And I'm going to swap out the starchier carbs for the higher fiber carbs, and call it a day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those are some great suggestions. And I think two really important things for people to keep in mind in those moments where the sacrifice just really sucks and you just don't want to do it is A, if you have some sort of FOMO of whether it's the pizza or the wine, I think just reminding yourself that the vast majority of splurge or drink opportunities that we have on a weekly basis are not remotely unique or difficult to get your hands on. So if for whatever reason you passed on something and you just feel like that totally ruined your night, you can probably have that thing 3 hours later or 12 hours later. So nothing is that, for the most part, that unique or special where you're ever actually going to wake up the next day and think, oh, yesterday was fun, but that pizza that's a mile down the street from my house, that really made the difference. So I think, as obvious as that may sound, that's helpful to keep in mind. And I also think I would say, B, if you are on a deficit calorie range, keeping in mind that's not your forever. And that's actually one of the things that I was just talking about on last week's podcast and weight loss for smaller women is that, if your budget is, I don't know, 1,400 calories or so, there will come a time post diet where we work you back up to ideally 1,700, 1,800, even closer to 2,000 or so. And not that things will ever go back to a free for all, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel where you get a little bit more flexibility, where maybe now you can work in an extra glass of wine or a little bit of dessert or something like that. So again, just in the moments where it's like, oh, this really sucks, it's probably not that special of a splurge or drink. You can probably get your hands on it anytime. And then also, this isn't quite a forever thing. Certainly, a lot of stuff you do have to maintain, but you do get a little flexibility back. I always use the financial analogies of, okay, I'm in debt. I'm going to really buckle down here, keep my budget tight. But then once you get to a better financial position, no, you can't be reckless, but maybe you can spend a little bit more freely than when you did when you were trying to get out of debt, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And another thing that we touched on a minute ago about as far as maintenance goes, right? I think we know how to diet. Like we know how to restrict ourselves when we want to restrict ourselves and diet. Like we know how to do that. We don't know how to keep it off. No one has really taught women how to keep weight off. And I think, what I had said before about having that number as the goal, like whatever that number is moving away from having one number and giving yourself a range. And when you give yourself a range, I tell my clients all the time, you've got a part of your range and you've got a low part of your range. And as long as you're in that range, do not worry about it. Eat the things, do whatever, whatever it is that lines up with the life that you want to lead. Just know that that's your range. And, you know, when you're at the high part of your range, those are the times where you're going to be like, I'm going to pull back a little bit. You know, I'm not going to I'm not going out maybe, or I'm not going to order XYZ that I, might have or something like that. And I think knowing that you have a range, and it's hard for women because we've never really lived in the range. We've only lived to the number. And
Mm.
so I have this conversation with my clients all the time. I'm like, don't worry about it. Like, what do you mean, don't worry about it? I'm like, you're in the range. Like, take the pressure off. Enjoy whatever. And you know how this works. You weigh yourself every single day. You see the fluctuations, and yes, maybe if you do XYZ tomorrow, you'll be either over the high part of your range or you'll be right at it, and you know what to do. And I think that's the nuance of maintenance. It's not this I'm strict, I've got to hold on to the reins, but it's sort of this flexibility. One of the analogies that I like to share is, if you're driving down the freeway and the police is right behind you, it is all you can do to not go over the speed limit, right? Like, you are holding on, like you do not want to go over like even 5 miles over the speed limit because he's right behind you. But when the police is not there, maybe you're cruising 5 or 10 or whatever over the speed limit. And that's kind of how it is in like maintenance, right? Like, when you are in weight loss mode in that calorie deficit, you are like that police is behind you, like you want to go, right? But you can't always. And so I think that's the other thing. And then in that maintenance range, it does become a little bit of a game. And this is going to sound bad. You're going to understand what I mean when I say this. It's going to sound like, what does she mean? It's almost like, how much can I get away with? Right?
Yes.
Like how many more calories can I have? Can I have an extra cookie? Like, what is that? And that becomes, in maintenance, that becomes the experiment.
I think that's actually a very fun game for people to start playing instead of always being, again, in this reduction mode of how can I eat as little as possible? How can I be as small as possible, weigh as little as possible, to how much food can I get on my plate and still stay within this maintenance range? And I find that for, I'd say, the vast majority of women that I work with, when they do reach a weight loss goal, and when we do start to send the calories in the other direction, it's like, I couldn't possibly eat this much. And half the time, it's still a moderate deficit. It's not even a full maintenance estimate yet. It's just so foreign and so uncomfortable for a lot of people to consciously choose to eat more and kind of see where those limits are. But the people who actually lean into that experiment, I find that time and time again are surprised with how much they can actually eat calorie wise and still maintain, especially if you're working on getting your step counts up, increasing whole foods, protein specifically, overall activity levels. You might end up adding 400 to 600 calories to what your like end dieting calories are. And then, yeah, you start to push those limits a little bit of how much food can I keep on my plate. And just from a lifestyle perspective, that is so much more enjoyable and sustainable. And then, not to mention the physiological upside of just having that many more calories to work with, everything from brain power to energy levels to workouts to recovery, strength and muscle building potential. It's just like a much better way to live. So I love that you mentioned that of, okay, you'll get to the point where you do actually see, what can I get away with here? Which, yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's almost like how much can I put on my plate? Yes, but when you're dieting, right? And I hate the like cheat meal sort of mentality, that cheating thing, but the how much can I get away with it almost does feel like cheating in a sense, right? Like, let me just, kind of see. But no, I think repeatable meals, restaurant, alcohol, um, looking to the long-term goal, like what is realistic for me, is not going to be realistic for someone else. And I think a lot of times, you know, because, you know, Susan talked to Karen at work and Mary Jo is doing such and such, you know, I need to start doing this. Well, just because it worked for her doesn't necessarily mean it's right for you. It might work for you, but it might need some tweaking and that kind of thing. I think one of the biggest areas, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this, but one of the biggest areas I think because there is so much information available right now, and you know, there's always some sort of hot button in health, and fitness, you know, everyone's so focused on their protein and knowing their protein, but yet they've forgotten that the calorie is the driver. And so, I will get all kinds of messages on a regular basis on how do I figure out my calories and how do I figure out my protein and what is important. And I've been doing this and I've been doing that. Do you find also that that people are more focused on protein than calories right now?
Yeah, I think the kind of obsession with adding protein to absolutely every product or food that we possibly can. And I like that generally that people are heading in that direction of being more protein focused, but it's okay to just let a pancake be a pancake. Like not everything needs that addition. And obviously many people are very frustrated with their perceived inability to lose weight. And when you ask them about their habits, people seem to address everything except how many calories they're actually eating. Maybe it is something like protein. Maybe it is, well, I'm pretty mindful, like I make good choices, or I'm pretty moderate, or I eat pretty clean. Like, how many calories are you eating? And we're not saying calories are the only thing that matters, of course, but that is what ultimately dictates, changes in weight. So to answer your question more succinctly, yes, I do find that right now there is a big trend with just, protein water, protein pancakes, protein everything. Calories, ironically enough, I think get lost in the shuffle a little bit because people frequently get out of touch with how much they're actually having. Maybe they feel like they're in the ballpark, but the results don't lie. And I think at least most people are sporadically out of touch with that number.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I think initially, really, if a person is looking to lose weight, I think it is a realistic thing to track what you're currently eating without changing anything just to see. Just again, experiment just to see. You don't have to track for the rest of your life if you don't want to, but it does make things a whole lot easier. You know, I like you, weighing your food on a food scale is important just from an accuracy standpoint. And numbers don't lie, you know, just like your bank account, you know, it is what it is. And I tell clients, you know, if you're home, why wouldn't you do it? Like,
Mhm.
like if you're home, what's the holdup, you know? And most people, there's no holdup. For the majority of folks, it's an inconvenience because they're not used to it yet. It seems wonky and hard and awkward and time consuming. You know what it is for 2 weeks. For about 2 weeks, if you've never done it before, yeah. If you make a bunch of recipes, it's going to be harder. So that's another thing to sort of think through when you are making, you know, your meals. Initially, single ingredient things are going to be a whole lot easier to track. Thus the bowls, right? I mean,
Of course.
that's fantastic. Yes. But then I think when the people that are resistant from the standpoint, and I don't know if you've worked with many like this, but from the standpoint of their children. I don't
Mhm.
want my children to think I'm being obsessive about this. And I think the answer to that, in a very sort of empowering way to younger kids, is, you know, mom wants to be as strong as possible. So I need to make sure I'm getting enough protein. Or, you know, I really love this too much, or, and I want to have more of it. So I just need to make sure I'm getting the right amount.
Mm.
It can be done in a very positive way that has nothing to do with being on a diet or weight loss or any of that sort of thing if you frame it the right way. But I think because we've had such a negative viewpoint for so long that's a challenge, I think, for some people.
Yeah. Funny enough, earlier last year, 2026 now. So earlier last year, I was staying with a buddy in Australia who has two little girls, and they saw me make my bowl all the time where I'd have chicken, beans, rice, basically just Chipotle style stuff. And they did ask, like, "What are you doing?" And my buddy, who's also a fitness professional, I saw him look at me, kind of curious what I'd say. And I used the exact script you mentioned. I said, "Well, this is protein right here, and I want to make sure that I'm getting enough to be big and strong so that when I work out with your dad, we can lift a bunch of weight. And the rice that I have here, I want to make sure that I'm having enough to have lots of energy." So, one of the girls is a dancer, one's into skateboarding. I'm like, so when you do activities like that, you can make sure that you're getting enough. Not that I'm encouraging them to use a food scale, of course, but just because it did look so, why is he doing that? And I'm
I
certainly not going
love
to,
that.
you
Yeah.
know, and of course, part of it is, for me, body composition management. I don't have like aggressive fat loss goals, but it's just so damn easy to slip into a surplus that I do like that pulse check because it takes, you know, as you mentioned, after the first few weeks, the initial learning curve, 30 seconds to do. It's just to me, in my head, it's just such an easy thing to do to thread whatever line you need to between a deficit, maintenance, and a surplus. But yeah, when they asked me that, it was just a quick reframe of not, your dad's weird friend with the weird accent just wants abs. It was no, I want to make sure that I'm big and strong and, have lots of energy for the day. Um, Emily, so we got a few questions beforehand when we posted about this chat, and I think we already answered one of them pretty well, which is how do you adjust for maintenance? How do you determine a goal weight? Of course, you talked about a weight range, which I think is great. So let's tackle. We had a few other questions beforehand. I'll just kind of hit you one by one, if that's okay.
Sure, sure, sure.
Okay. Let's see. How to actually, this is a good one. How to track easier? Any suggestions for just making tracking easier?
You can just start off tracking protein only if you wanted to. I mean, if it's cumbersome to you, you could do that. Also, Chronometer and MyFitnessPal, the premium versions, you can scan barcodes. That's an easy something. Um, I don't really think that like the AI picture thing is all that accurate, so I wouldn't recommend that. But definitely scanning barcodes and that kind of thing. And if you have repeatable meals, that's the easiest part right there because you log it in once and then just carry it over for a couple days.
I think a lot of people, even people who track consistently, don't realize that a lot of these apps do have the option to save your repeatable meals. I have the same protein oatmeal every single day. It's the same weights every time, so I just record it once. I do the add a recipe thing in or custom meal maybe in Chronometer, and then when I go to log it, I just literally two buttons plus symbol protein oatmeal, or on Chronometer specifically, when you swipe left, copy yesterday's entry. And
Mhm.
since I eat 4 meals per day, and meals one, two, and honestly, usually three are exactly the same, my meal planning is literally swipe, copy. So what I give up in novelty, I get back in this process just being so easy. And I do really enjoy the meals that I have. So then all I have to do the next day after planning my meals is take the 11 seconds that it takes to break out a food scale and make sure what I'm having actually matches what was in this saved recipe. And what comes to mind, it's funny, I just made a video about this and I feel like it always gets picked on, but peanut butter, it adds up quickly. And I do put peanut butter in my protein oatmeal. So even though I don't have really fat loss goals right now, I do still break out the food scale for that because, 30 grams visually is fairly similar to 42 grams. And if I miss that every day, there's 700 or 1,000 calories back in my week. So, bit of a side tangent there. But yes, I'm such a big fan of the saved meals, custom recipes, whatever you want to call them. And then you can literally copy and paste. And oh my God, does that make things so much easier?
So easy. Yes.
Another question we got. Um, Patience needed with the process once you have a good routine of clean eating. Can you speak to the patience piece?
I mean, that is huge. That is huge because life does what life does, right? Like you can be cruising along and, checking all the boxes, and then something happens unexpected and sort of throws you a little bit, and so what, so here, here is your the priority is the weight loss, right? And then something happens and that it doesn't take the top spot anymore. And so instead of fighting that, that's where you just lean in to the easiest possible things to kind of keep going. Because like everybody knows, really, there's no motivation that's going to keep you going. You're going to have a bad day. You're going to have a bad week. You might have a bad year. I mean, like stuff happens, And I think at the end of the day, if you can be patient with yourself and patient with the process, taking that timeline off. You know what? If it takes me a year, if it takes me 2 years, whatever the case is, slow and steady. I mean, that children's rhyme nursery story about the rabbit and the hare, they both cross a finish line. The hare's going to pass out while the turtle can keep going, right? So it's just really like giving yourself some grace on the days that are not optimal and being okay with it instead of I gotta have to start over, oh, I've screwed up. I'm just gonna eat everything in sight, and then that happens the next day and the next day. And then the next thing it's 2 weeks, and then you really are like in a place where you don't want to be. And so I think that if you can I post regularly sort of this never three thing. It's like, never miss 3 workouts in a row, never eat 3 off meals in a row, right? And so I think that if you can sort of accept that, okay, the next meal, whatever the next meal is, I'm right back on. It might not be perfect. I might overeat it, whatever, but at least it is moving the needle in a healthier way.
You mentioned the example a little while back of driving on the highway and feeling like the police officers behind you. Another highway analogy that I like with nutrition is the idea that if you missed your exit to get to your destination, you would not just say, this is my life now, and just continue driving down the highway forever. You'd say, all right, maybe you even miss the next exit after that, but you're not going to let things keep spiraling. It might take you a little bit longer, but generally you would take the next available exit toward your destination. And I do think that for most people, the feelings of failure and kind of self sabotage that often go hand in hand are a direct result of the very unnecessary, often unreasonable timelines that we put on ourselves to achieve certain things. So, going back to the beginning of the episode, you mentioned that you gave yourself this 9+ month runway to make adjustments, to experiment, to find out, what works for you, what these long-term norms could be. If you had given yourself 9 weeks to do that, like a lot of people do, maybe you would have made like the same great adjustments, the same early progress, but because the frame was different of like, oh, this has to happen over the next 8, 9 weeks during some sort of challenge, all of a sudden those same good things feel like a failure. And again, I think for a lot of people, that's what leads to, well, I screwed up anyway, self sabotage, the spiral that comes from there. So obviously, there's a sweet spot. We don't want to go so slow that you completely lose steam. But I'd say as a whole, most people should probably just double the timelines that they initially come to us with, because it
Mhm.
usually is what, like an event, a change of season, something of, hey, I know I've been doing this the last 16 years, but 16 weeks from now I have this thing. I'm like, we can try. But yes,
Right.
I think just, yeah, giving yourself a bit more of a runway just makes everything so much smoother, so much smoother. And if that feels slow to you, I just challenge people of, hey, the alternative, which is pedal to the metal, fizzle out, pedal to the metal, fizzle out, being really impatient. 10 years has passed and that hasn't worked for you. And I know that might sound a little harsh, but I think it's the nudge that some people need of, hey, the thing that feels slower is actually, when you go more macro, it's the faster path to what you eventually want.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Emily, I think we did a great job uh, answering a lot of the questions that came in just through the flow of the conversation. The only one that we did not touch upon that I would love your thoughts on was looking to improve my sleep in my 60s. Do you have any suggestions for that? And do you feel like anything does change with age?
Hmm. Um, I mean, I guess it does. I haven't no personally, I haven't noticed anything. Um, I think I think sleep overall, the majority of people do not do a good job with sleep. We stay up too late, we scroll too long, we we don't get out of bed quick enough, all of those sorts of things. I don't know. I think for me personally, over the past couple of years, my shift has been, and this is ridiculous because you think a person that is my age be like, "Oh, you got all day. What do you do all day?" Well, I do work all day. So, I mean, there's that, right? Um, but like I get up at 4:15. And in order to get up at 4:15, I need to be in bed by like 9 o'clock with I mean, lights out no later than like 9:30, 9:45. And then I'm living large if it's 10 o'clock, you know? But like for me, I enjoy now, because I've made it a habit, right? Like I enjoy getting up early. I enjoy the house quiet. I get on the treadmill and I just walk slow. I do my reading in the morning. I watch the news in the morning, all of that sort of thing. And then at like, I don't know, 6:15 or whatever, I get ready to go to the gym and then I come home and then like by 8:30, I'm having breakfast and I'm on with my day. And I've got no distraction at all. I've handled what I want to handle in those, 3 or 4 hours that I'm up by myself. Um, and I think a lot of times people are so either sleep deprived, they're tired, they don't want to get up, or they feel they can't get up early. And so then their workout or their meal prep or whatever else they have going on is going to become an evening job, right? But then they don't feel like it. There was something on the calendar they forgot about. There's a host of things that take us out of our routine in the evening. I mean, so for me, getting up early has been good for me, physically and mentally, I think. Um, I don't know. With age, I don't, that's just a hard question because I really haven't experienced it being harder. I think for some women, like menopausal, perimenopausal, the sleep is interrupted because of hormonal changes and that's just so varied with all kinds of women, I think. Um, I do think it's one of those things that if it is a particular concern, you know, talking with your doctor about it is always, a good place to start. And then also sort of looking at like the eating window. Like because I think if you eat a couple of hours, let's say you're having some snacks while you're watching TV and then you go to bed, and maybe it's that 2 hour window that you've eaten some things, your body is digesting those, and so that could be a sleep interrupter. I don't know. I mean, for some people it bothers them and for others it doesn't. I think the biggest concern for most people when it comes to sleep, if it's not a hormonal issue or, that digestion issue, I think really for most people it's a stress management issue. Like your brain doesn't turn off, like you're on something that is of concern to you. and your brain doesn't turn off. And I think in those cases, um, skewing your time so that you can get up earlier just to have some time to brain dump or journal or something to manage your stress, I think that can help sleep.
Again, great suggestions. And I think similar to say tracking more precisely for the first time, there can be a little bit of an adjustment period if you are trying to wake up earlier to get a little bit of you time. So your stress is better managed. Ideally, you sleep better at night. But I think what can be really helpful there, and I've had some clients do this, is actually schedule whether it is, maybe a workout class, a workout class in the morning. I know you often have your training sessions in the morning. Maybe you have a friend who's on a similar journey who might join you for a walk, but something that feels non negotiable in the morning. Because if you don't feel like you even have the option of hitting snooze, you're far more likely to take your sleep habits seriously at night. And the first few alarms may hit pretty hard for sure. But once you've made that shift and you've moved up that sleep window, things do get a lot easier. So I have had some clients do that with success, especially on the weekends, if they don't want to deviate too much from what their weekday norms are. Actually, one of my first ever online clients years ago would routinely do that on weekend mornings. He would schedule spin classes to make sure that he didn't go too hard the night before. And I mean, it works from
I
an
love it.
accountability
Yeah.
perspective. So, yeah,
Yeah,
I
that's
think
great.
having things to look forward to in the morning, some sort of you time, whatever that looks like. And I think during that initial transitional period, if you can get something on the calendar that you can't really budge, whether it's a training session with somebody, whether it's, again, maybe you can go on a walk, just something where you don't feel like you even have the option of negotiating it. Because I think if the mornings are pretty unstructured, it gets very easy at night to hit next episode. And all of a sudden, 11:30, midnight, even past that.
Right. Well, and I would just add on to that about meeting your friend or whatever. Um, it can't be a friend that bails. You know, you've got those friends who are like, I need to be held accountable. I do too. Oh, well, let's walk. And then the next thing you know, it's like a text, hey, I'm not coming today, and we know who those people are in our lives, and I think that's a value of having a coach, first of all, is an outside person who does not have the personal responsibility of bringing joy to your life just in that context, right? That if you say, I want to do XYZ, please hold me accountable. Okay, what does that look like? Let's map it out. Okay, then if you're telling me that like I have a client right now. She's got a lot of stuff going on. One of her goals is really to like meal prep on Sundays. And I said, okay, that's great. What time are you either going to be finished with meal prep on Sundays or in process? What is reasonable to you? And she said, how about 5 o'clock? I said, great. So I have a reminder in my phone. If I don't hear from her by 5 o'clock on Sundays, a quick text. How's the meal prep going? And she'll send me a picture of her kitchen in disarray, or she'll say, I'm in the grocery, or she'll say, I'm so behind today. But at least it's a checkpoint of, I want to do this, and you're not going to not hold me accountable to it. So I need to be honest with myself. And is this realistic for me or not? And I think that's where we set ourselves up with the accountability is what is realistic for you. If you say noon on Sunday, well, that's probably not realistic, but 5 o'clock could be. So I think finding the people who you are going to make those appointments with is key.
For sure. And one other suggestion, option I'll throw in the mix is if you don't live near somebody that you could meet up with for a morning walk or a morning workout, I find that even just texting a friend that is reliable. For example, one of my best friends lives in London. Here I am in Buenos Aires, Argentina. We can't exactly go on morning walks together, but something that we've done quite a bit over the last few years is daily texts of two to three non-negotiables. So in my case, it might be a step minimum, a protein and fiber minimum, and maybe a reading goal that I have just so I scroll a little bit less at night. His might be a study goal for the next CPA exam and actually some language learning stuff. And we'll just fire off those texts knowing that we have to answer to each other and see for the week 3 out of 5. Well, I don't want that to turn into 3 out of 6. So we'll send the non negotiable, but then include where we're at for the week 4 out of 6, 5 out of 7, and obviously try to rack up as many 3 for 3 days as we can. So, yes, perfect world. You connect with somebody in person because I do think there's some heightened accountability there. Obviously, we're biased, but coaching, great option. Somebody who's like full-time job is to hold you accountable to stuff. But I also think if you have friends that or family members or in a similar path as you can hold each other accountable, even if it is technically virtual. Just anybody else to answer to, because holding yourself accountable is just not really a thing. But okay, I got to text Emily tomorrow morning, and I don't want to tell her I skipped a walk for the third day in a row. I think that can be
Right.
quite helpful.
Right. Right. Yeah. And like right now, I'm like one of my goals this year, and it seems ridiculous, is I want to consistently be in my calorie budget consistently, right? I'm not in a deficit, but I'm in a maintenance and I just want to consistently do it, for the year, not so much like surplus and debt, like all over the place, right? And so just like you know, I send the text to our buddy PJ, I'm like, all right, discomfort today, but I did it, and that kind of thing. But it's having somebody that you can check in with, and be honest with. I think that is also key.
The last thing that I'll highlight here is something that yourself, me, PJ, my buddy Matt, that I'm referring to, all have in common is a lot of knowledge about what we need to be doing. Like the things we're communicating about in any direction are not groundbreaking of, the importance of hitting your calories, steps, whatever the goals are for the day. So it's not a know what to do factor. It's having systems in place to help you implement those things that you're already familiar with. Not that, say, PJ doesn't teach a lot, but I bet now, compared to when you started, much of the things you guys focus on are executing things you've already learned about, things that you've already established. Same thing when I'm communicating with Matt. I know the importance of getting my steps in. Like, I know what I need to do. I just need to get myself to do it. That's something we hear all the time. Okay, what's the system for the follow through? And that's where that external accountability can be so helpful.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Emily, before I let you go, I do wrap up every episode with something I call the fast four. So, 4 questions that have nothing to do with health, fitness, and nutrition, just whatever comes to mind.
Okay, go for it.
First one, what would you be doing if you were not a nutritionist?
Travel.
For work?
Just for fun.
But for fun? I like
For
that.
fun.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just travel. I just be on my own somewhere traveling with my husband and dogs, Yeah.
I love that. Now, I'm curious, anything on your short list as somebody who is also very passionate about travel? Is there anything, any places you have not been to that would be at the very top of the list?
Well, you may or may not know, our oldest son lives in Japan, and he's been there for a couple of years, and we have not gone. So that is on the top of the list right now.
I love it. I love it. I'm hoping to get my family down to Argentina at some point. I think most Americans, myself included, do not fully, or myself included before I got down here, do not fully appreciate how far south it is. For
Mm.
example, if you're coming from Boston, the area where I grew up, you're taking the flight usually to New York first, and then it's 11 hours from
Ooh.
JFK all the way down here. So door to door, it's like a 16-hour commute if you're lucky. So it's a little bit of a troop.
Oh, yeah.
And then obviously Japan, I mean, more than that. So these are some
Similar
big
to
trips.
that, though, right? I mean, similar, but yeah, it's
Yeah,
far.
some big trips. If you could only listen to one band or artist music forever, who would you pick?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked me this. This is great. Okay, I'm telling Bruno Mars, right? And he's out with new music after 10 years.
10
So
years, really?
10 years, yeah. So his last album was 10 years ago, and he's been in, I guess, Vegas doing his residency, for all these years. So he's
Uh,
out with new music. And anyway, my sister and I have tickets to go to his concert in April.
Amazing.
Um, so anyway, long story, but very short. There were 100,000 people in front of me in the Ticketmaster queue for his Dallas concert. And it all worked out and we were able to buy like good seats. It was very stressful, but anyway, yes, Bruno Mars is my guy.
Wow, that's incredible. I'm always blown away by the numbers that he does. Like I love music, so periodically I'll look at, basically who's topping the charts in different countries and how it's different in the US versus across the world. And it's like there's everybody. And then there's this little league at the top that's Taylor Swift, Bruno Mars, Bad Bunny, maybe Drake a little while ago, but it's like there's everybody. And then there's Bad Bunny, Bruno Mars, and Taylor Swift who just routinely blow
Yeah.
everybody out of the water. It's mind-boggling. Um, Emily, one food, or we'll say meal, for the rest of your life. And let's say, because every time I ask fitness people, they think, well, I need to get this nutrient and that nutrient. You could pick pizza. It satisfies your health needs, just pure enjoyment. What are you picking?
Ice cream.
Ice cream. Okay. Any specific flavor or just any ice cream?
Oh, I like a mocha, like a coffee mocha chip situation.
Okay, that's
Mhm.
great. One of my favorites is coffee Oreo. I'm not a huge ice cream guy, but if there's coffee Oreo, I think that's great. Emily, what is the biggest thing that you want to accomplish personally or professionally in the next calendar year?
Mm, it's a good one. Um, that's a good question. One of the things I'll say is that I have been working on just from like a mom's point of view, right? Is when your adult kids want to spend time with you. Like that is like the greatest thing. And that's been happening like for the past couple of years. Like we've just done fun things together, or we've met up places and that sort of thing. And so I think really like personally the goal would be that, just to hang out with my adult kids. Like I said, our oldest lives in Japan and our youngest just got married this year and he lives out west. So they're not close, proximity wise. So it does, we try to make some fun happen and get together with them. So yeah.
I think that's an incredible answer. My family is also fairly spread out both across the US and then at times internationally. So I know how special it is, those somewhat rare moments where you can get at least bits and pieces of the family together. It's just amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Super fun.
Emily, if people want to learn more about you, where should we send them?
My website or Instagram is where I hang out at. And it is Nutrition Coaching 365.
Okay, great. I will include both of those in the show notes. And Emily, I really appreciate you being here today. This is fantastic.
I loved it. Thanks for having me.